It was 9:14 a.m. when the officer finally realized his badge wasn't going to save him. We were in Courtroom 5C. The digital clock above the doors glowed red. 9:14. The air conditioner rattled in the ceiling like it always does on humid mornings in Oak Ridge County. And at the defense table, Officer Tyler Kane, 12-year veteran, Traffic Division, was still smiling. He wore his dress blues, polished brass, service ribbons. His badge caught the fluorescent light every time he shifted in his chair, as if it were trying to remind everyone who he was. Case number 23CR 0471 glared up at me from the file. State of Oak Ridge versus Tyler J. Kane. I had already read the jury's verdict. I had already reviewed the pre-sentence report, the victim's statement, and a stack of internal affairs summaries I wished I'd never had to see. But he hadn't heard my decision yet. The bailiff called the room to order. The gallery settled, quiet rustle of jackets, shuffle of feet, someone's nervous cough from the second row. Officer Kane, I said, please stand. He rose slowly, confidently, like a man about to hear good news. You can tell when someone expects mercy they haven't earned. It shows up in their posture before it ever reaches their face. His attorney, Mr. Dalton, touched his elbow and whispered something. Kane nodded, still half smiling. He really believed, right up until that moment, that the badge on his chest would protect him from the consequences of what he'd done. And that's when everything changed. Let me take you back to the morning this case first came across my docket. Because without that, the sentence I handed down at 9:14 a.m. won't land the way it should. 8 weeks earlier, 8:31 a.m., my clerk's voice rang out, the way it does every weekday. Case number 23CR 0471, State of Oak Ridge versus Tyler James Kane. Oak Ridge is one of those mid-sized American cities you've seen 1,000 times without noticing. Brick municipal buildings, a downtown of aging office towers, and just enough blue lights on Friday nights to remind you that people make bad choices everywhere. I've been on this bench for 24 years, long enough to watch rookies retire, to see kids I sentenced to juvenile detention come back as parents, and long enough to know that when a police officer is the name on the right side of the V, the whole room feels different. On paper, it looked straightforward. Count 1, felony DUI with serious bodily injury. Count 2, leaving the scene of an accident with injury. Count 3, official misconduct. The alleged victim, Lila Green, 32, ICU nurse, driving home after a double shift. The allegation, off-duty officer Kane blew through a red light at 1:13 a.m., broadside her sedan, then stepped out of his truck, flashed his badge at the first responding unit, and tried to talk his way out of the consequences. The report said he told the responding officer, "You don't want to do this. I'm on the job." In the margin of the file, a clerk had scribbled a time, 1 hour, 16 minutes, and 44 seconds, the timestamp from a nearby traffic camera. But the more I read, the less simple it felt. Because tucked behind the charging document was another packet, internal affairs summaries going back 6 years. Excessive force complaint, unsubstantiated. 2 citizen complaints about attitude and threats of arrest, closed with counseling. A note about command presence concerns during traffic stops. On their own, none of those proved anything about the crash. Taken together, they painted the outline of a man who had started to believe the rules were something that happened to other people. And the badge on his chest had been reinforcing that belief for a very long time. When Kane walked into Courtroom 5C that first day, he did not look like a broken man. He looked like an officer reporting for inspection. Dark blue uniform pressed so sharply you could have cut paper with the creases. Shined shoes. Hair cropped regulation short. He moved with that particular kind of stiffness I've seen in career law enforcement, part armor, part habit. He took his seat at the defense table without glancing at the gallery. Dalton, his attorney, sat beside him. Dalton is the kind of defense lawyer who lives in tailored gray suits and checks his watch more than he checks with his clients. Good at what he does. Very aware of who signs the checks. On the other side of the room, Assistant District Attorney Morgan Ellis organized her files. Black blazer, blue legal pad, 3 color-coded highlighters. She's one of those prosecutors who underlines more than she talks, and when she does talk, it's usually because she knows exactly where she's going. Then there was Lila. She sat in the first row of the gallery, hands folded in her lap, a soft brace around her neck barely visible under a beige cardigan. Dark circles under her eyes, the kind that don't come from one bad night's sleep, but from many. Every so often, her right leg twitched, a tiny involuntary movement she tried and failed to still. Her car had taken the brunt of the impact on the driver's side. The file said fractured collarbone, mild traumatic brain injury. The images I'd seen in the medical records were worse than the words. Heroes and villains don't walk into my courtroom wearing labels. They walk in wearing uniforms or hospital bracelets or cheap off-the-rack suits. You learn who they are by what they do when the story starts to fall apart. And that's exactly what was about to happen next. We started with the state's case. Call Officer Raymond Cole, ADA Ellis said. Cole took the stand in his patrol uniform. Younger than Kane, maybe 5 years on the force. He raised his right hand, voice steady, and swore to tell the truth. Officer Cole, Ellis began, where were you on March 12th at approximately 1:15 a.m.? On patrol, ma'am, he said. Eastbound on Maple, approaching 3rd. Did something draw your attention? Yes, ma'am. I saw a silver sedan in the intersection, heavy front-end damage. White pickup truck with damage on the passenger side. Both in the intersection, airbags deployed. Did you stop? Yes. She walked him through the scene. Airbags. Steam hissing from a radiator. Broken glass crunching under his boots. And who did you see first? The female driver in the sedan, he said. Later identified as Ms. Green. She appeared disoriented, complaining of pain in her shoulder and head. Did you see the driver of the pickup? He nodded once, jaw tightening. Yes, ma'am. Officer Kane. In uniform? No, ma'am. Street clothes. Did you know him? Yes, ma'am. We work for the same department. What did he say when you approached? Cole shifted in the witness chair. He glanced, just for the briefest moment, toward the defense table, toward Kane. Answer the question, officer, I said. Yes, Your Honor. He cleared his throat. He said, you don't want to do this. I'm on the job. Then he displayed his badge. The gallery murmured softly. I let it rise and fall on its own. Did he appear intoxicated? Ellis asked. Yes, ma'am. I could smell alcohol. His speech was slurred. He was unsteady on his feet. Did you ask him to perform field sobriety tests? Yes. Did he comply? He laughed, Cole said, and told me, come on, Ray, we're good. I'll owe you one. You learn a lot in moments like that. Who someone thinks they are, who they think you are, and who they think the rules are meant for. But the next detail stopped the room cold. Did he eventually perform the tests? Ellis asked. No, ma'am. When I informed him that I would document his refusal, he got closer and said, you really want to be the guy who takes down another cop in this town? Did you feel pressured? Yes, ma'am. Did you proceed anyway? Yes. I requested a supervisor and initiated the DUI investigation. Dalton rose slowly. Objection, Your Honor. Portions of this answer go to internal department policy, not the elements of the offense. Overruled, I said. This goes to context and potential official misconduct. The jury is entitled to hear it. Cole's thumb tapped against the wooden arm of the witness chair. Little details like that tell you how much effort it takes for someone to do the right thing. By mid-morning, we'd heard from the crash reconstruction specialist, the paramedics, and the emergency room nurse. The defense's story was simple. Kane had hit some black ice, overcorrected, and possibly drifted into the intersection. He'd had a couple drinks after a rough day at work, but wasn't impaired. Any perception of intoxication was due to shock from the crash. Dalton promised the jury they would hear from Kane himself. And they did. Defense calls Officer Tyler Kane, he said. Kane took the stand with the same quiet confidence he'd carried into the courtroom. Raised his right hand. Swore. Saturday, Officer Kane, Dalton began. How long have you served this community? 12 years, he said. Traffic and DUI enforcement. Have you made arrests for DUI yourself? Hundreds, he said. Maybe more. So you know how these investigations work? Yes. He painted a picture of a dedicated officer pushed to the edge, burned out, traumatized by horrific crashes, making one mistake on one bad night. I had 2 beers after work, he said. I misjudged the light. It turned yellow. I thought I could make it. Next thing I knew, there was an impact. He kept his eyes soft when he said it. He glanced toward Lila, let his voice catch just enough to sound like remorse, not enough to sound like responsibility. Did you ever intend to leave Ms. Green without help? Dalton asked. Of course not, he said. I checked on her, I called it in, I cooperated. I never tried to use my badge to get out of anything. Dalton nodded, satisfied. No further questions. Ellis stood. She walked to the podium slowly, flipping through her notes as if she were still deciding where to begin. But I'd seen that look before. She already knew exactly where she was going. Officer Kane, she said, you testified that you called it in. Correct? Yes, ma'am. And you testified that you never tried to use your badge to get out of anything. Correct? Yes. She picked up a thin, dark remote from her table. Your Honor, permission to publish State's Exhibit 12? Dalton frowned. Objection. We have not, you have, counsel, she said. It was produced with this supplemental discovery on June 5th, page 3 of 7. Marked and disclosed. I flipped through my own file. She was right. Objection overruled, I said. You may publish. The lights at the front of the courtroom dimmed. The screen mounted to my left flickered on. Grainy black and white video appeared, the corner of Maple and 3rd, timestamp 1 hour, 13 minutes, and 20 seconds. We watched the crash again. The truck blew the red. The sedan entered on a green. Impact. Spin. Debris. Then, for the first time, we watched what happened after. Kane's door opened. He staggered out, steadied himself on the frame, then walked, not to Lila's car, but to the intersection's edge, weaving slightly. He pulled out his phone, held it to his ear. Then another vehicle approached from the east. A patrol car. We saw Cole's unit stop. He stepped out, started toward the sedan, and Kane intercepted him. There was no audio on the traffic cam, just body language. Kane stepped close, flashed something at chest level, took a step into Cole's space, shoulders squared. Cole leaned back. You didn't need sound to understand the message. You don't want to do this. I'm one of you. And that's when everything changed. The video kept rolling. We saw Kane gesture back at his truck, then toward Cole's car. We saw him shake his head when Cole gestured toward Lila's sedan. It was only when a second unit arrived, supervisor stripes visible even in grainy black and white, that anyone went to check on her. The lights came up. No one moved. If you're still with me at this point, if sitting in this courtroom with me, watching that kind of entitlement play out in real time makes something in you tighten, this is probably your kind of story. I share these dramatized benchside views so you can see how power really behaves when it thinks no one's watching. If you want more days like this from a judge's chair, you're welcome to subscribe and stay in the gallery. Now, back to Kane. Because the worst thing he did that night wasn't just running that red light. It was what he said when he thought the camera and the law would never catch up. Ellis clicked the remote again. Now, officer, she said, you also testified that you called it in. Correct? Yes, ma'am. She held up a transcript. State's Exhibit 13 is a certified copy of the 911 calls from that intersection at 1:13 hours, as well as radio traffic from Unit 214, that's Officer Cole's unit. There is no outgoing call from your phone to 911 or dispatch in the 5 minutes after the crash. Dalton objected. Your Honor, the cellular records overruled, I said. He opened this door when he testified he made that call. The state may impeach. Ellis's voice stayed calm. Officer, if you didn't call dispatch, who did you call? He shifted in the witness chair. For the first time, the easy confidence slipped. Friends, he said. I don't remember exactly. Ellis raised an eyebrow. Friends? Or union representation? Dalton stood. Objection. She was already holding up another transcript. State's Exhibit 14. Certified transcript of a call from your phone to Sergeant Michael Danvers at 1 hour, 14 minutes, and 9 seconds. Would you like me to read the first line, or would you prefer to do it? I saw the color drain from Kane's face. You don't have to answer that. Dalton hissed. I'll read it, Ellis said. You, Mike, I screwed up. I hit somebody. I need you to get down here before this rookie writes me up. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Lila's hand flew to her mouth. What happened next made the whole courtroom go silent. Ellis continued, voice steady. Later in the call, you say, you know how this goes. I'll take the admin days. Just don't let them hang me out in front of a judge. She let the silence sit. Officer, she said softly, when you said you know how this goes, what did you mean? I was upset, he stammered. I didn't mean anything by it. You didn't mean that you expected a system you'd benefited from before to protect you again? Objection, Dalton snapped. Argumentative. Sustained, I said. Rephrase, Ms. Ellis. She nodded. Officer, in 12 years, had you ever been the defendant in a criminal courtroom before that night? No. Had you ever been counseled for talking to citizens during traffic stops about your friends at the courthouse? I don't recall. She held up an internal memo. Would this help refresh your recollection? This wasn't about embarrassing a man in uniform. It was about making clear to him, to the jury, and to everyone watching that in this room, badges and titles are evidence like anything else. They can help. They can hurt. They do not decide the outcome. The truth does. The jury deliberated for just under 3 hours. At 4:07 p.m., my clerk read the verdicts. On count 1, felony DUI causing serious bodily injury, guilty. On count 2, leaving the scene of an accident with injury, guilty. On count 3, official misconduct, guilty. Kane's smile had disappeared by then. But it was the morning of sentencing, 9:14 a.m., when his belief in the power of that badge finally collided with reality. We're back where we began. Officer Kane, I said, please stand. He rose. Dalton rose beside him. The gallery leaned forward almost as one body. I had reviewed his file. I had read the letters from colleagues, from his mother, from citizens he'd once helped at the scene of other crashes. I had read Lila's statement, how she can't drive through that intersection anymore without feeling her chest tighten, how she gets headaches that won't leave, how she questions every blue light she sees in her rearview mirror. I had also read the internal affairs summaries. You have 12 years of service, I began. You've seen what drunk driving does to families in this county. You have stood on the side of the road and watched other people led away in cuffs for the same choices you made that night. He stared straight ahead. And yet, I continued, when you ran that light and injured Ms. Green, your first instinct was not to render aid. It was not to call for help. It was to call a friend and try to shape what would happen next, to use your badge as a shield against consequences. Dalton shifted. Your Honor, if I may know, counsel, I said. You may speak when I'm finished. I turned my attention fully to Kane. In this courtroom, your badge is not a shield. It is a piece of metal that tells me you took an oath. A higher one than most people who stand at that table. You swore to protect, to enforce the law, to accept that the rules apply to you as much as to anyone else. His jaw flexed. For the first time, anger flashed across his face. Your Honor, he said, voice tight, I've given my life to this job. I've seen things that would make most people in this room never sleep again. I made one mistake. With respect, you don't know what it's like out there. The gallery rustled. Dalton looked like he wanted to sink through the floor. Officer, I said quietly, you're right. I haven't stood on the side of the highway at 3 a.m. picking glass out of my hair. I haven't done your job. I leaned forward. But I have seen what happens when people with badges start to believe those experiences buy them a discount on accountability. I've seen what happens when citizens stop believing the law applies the same way to everyone. And I will not help that belief grow, not in this room. I nodded to the bailiff. Officer Tyler James Kane, on count 1, you are sentenced to 4 years in the custody of the Department of Corrections. On count 2, 2 years concurrent. On count 3, 12 months concurrent. Your driving privileges are revoked for 10 years. You will pay restitution as ordered. Dalton started to object to the length. I raised a hand. Sit down, counsel, I said. You will have an opportunity to file post-sentencing motions. For now, we're done. Kane's eyes widened. House arrest, he blurted. Probation? You're really going to put a cop inside with the same people his voice broke. Yes, I said. Because today, you're not a cop. You are a convicted defendant. The badge on your chest does not entitle you to a different kind of justice. Not here. I looked at the bailiff. Remand him to custody. The bailiff stepped behind him, the metallic click of handcuffs cutting through the silence. What happened next made the whole courtroom go silent. Kane twisted around, eyes flashing. "You can't do this," he hissed. "You know what they'll do to me in there. You know who I am." I met his gaze. "I know exactly who you are," I said. "You're a man who thought his badge would save him from his own decisions. Today, the law proves you wrong." He looked, just for a second, toward the officers in the back row, his colleagues. None of them moved. Then the bailiff led him through the side door. The emblem on his shoulder patch flashed once under the fluorescent light, and he was gone. If you've ever watched a courtroom moment where power finally met accountability and felt something shift inside you, this is probably one of those moments. If you think more people need to see what it looks like when the robe, not the badge, holds the final say, hit like and tell me in the comments where you stand on sentences for officers who break the law. The drama ended for the cameras when that side door closed. But the real consequences took longer to unfold. 3 weeks later, a letter crossed my desk from the Oak Ridge Police Department's Internal Affairs Division. They had opened a formal investigation into Kane's prior traffic arrests, reviewing body cam footage and reports for patterns of similar conduct. 6 months after sentencing, another letter arrived from the State Peace Officer Standards and Training Board. Certification revoked. He would never serve as a sworn law enforcement officer in this state again. I didn't celebrate when I read that. I don't wake up hoping to end careers. Lila sent the court a brief update through the Victim Services Office. She'd gone back to work, slowly, building up her shifts again. She still avoided Maple and Third. She still flinched at the sound of squealing brakes. But in one line at the end of her letter, she wrote, "It mattered to me that the officer didn't get to walk away just because of who he was. I'm still scared when I see blue lights behind me. But I'm a little less scared knowing there are judges who will say, no, not this time." Stories like this one are dramatized. I change names, dates, details. But the dynamic, the way a badge can become a shield, and the way a courtroom has to decide whether to honor that shield or strip it away, that part is painfully real. In 24 years on this bench, I've learned something hard and simple. Power doesn't announce when it's about to cross the line. It doesn't come into court waving a flag that says, "I believe the rules don't apply to me." Sometimes it just flashes a badge at 2 a.m. and says, "You don't want to do this." Sometimes it calls a friend before it calls 911. Sometimes it stands at a defense table and asks for understanding it never gave the people it arrested. Accountability isn't about punishing cops or idolizing them. It's about insisting that the oath means what it says. That the same law an officer enforces on a stranger at the side of the road is the law that applies to him when he runs a red light and puts a nurse's life at risk. Grace doesn't mean pretending the crash didn't happen because he's seen terrible things on the job. Grace means giving him a fair trial, a chance to testify, and a sentence grounded in law, not in public anger, not in professional courtesy. Truth is the only thing that can hold trust together in a system like this. And in my courtroom, the truth wears a robe, not a uniform. Like every story I share here, this one is a dramatized composite. But the lesson it points to is very real. If the law bends every time a badge is flashed, sooner or later it snaps for everyone else. If this case stayed with you, if watching an officer discover that his badge couldn't buy him a different kind of justice made you rethink how power should work in a courtroom, there's another story I want you to hear next. It's about a mother who forged a single signature on a school form to protect her son and nearly ended up in prison when a prosecutor decided to make an example of her. Until one overlooked line of fine print turned the entire case upside down in under 2 minutes. Click on that next video, and I'll walk you through how one sentence buried in a policy manual forced everyone in the room, myself included, to rethink what criminal really meant in that case. Because in this courtroom, the story of accountability doesn't end with a badge. It starts with the truth.